Hello, friends. This is our fourth OCP broadcast, but I thought of calling it OCC. And then one of my friends reminded me, why not OCC? Meaning Old Commentary Commentaries. I thought it was a bit much, but it's a little bit more easy to remember. So let's call them OCCs. And they will offer, of course, my own old commentary perspectives. We'll continue now, and we will work with Ray 6. This is a longer commentary, and so it may take a little longer. I hope to be able to complete today this little series on the Law of Repulse, and to finish Ray 6 and Ray 7. So let's read the Ray 6 Law of Repulse. It's pretty intense, and it is applicable particularly to those who have the Ray 6 soul. But some people with the Ray 6 personality, I think, will recognize certain factors. The direction of Ray 6. I love and live and love again, the frenzied follower cried aloud. I like that phrase. I love and live and love again, the frenzied follower cried aloud, blinded by his desire for the teacher and the truth, but seeing naught but that which lay before his eyes. He wore on either side the blinding aids of every fanatic divine adventure. Only the long and narrow tunnel was his home and place of high endeavor. He had no vision except of that which was the space before his eyes. He had no scope for sight, no height, no depth, no wide extension. He had but room to go one way. He went that way alone, or dragging those who asked the way of him. He saw a vision shifting as he moved and taking varying form. Each vision was for him the symbol of his highest dreams, the height of his desire. He rushed along the tunnel, seeking that which lay ahead. He saw not much, and only one thing at a time, a person or a truth, a Bible or his picture of his God, an appetite to dream, but only one. Sometimes he gathered in his arms the vision that he saw, and found it not. Sometimes he reached the person whom he loved, and found instead of visioned beauty, a person like himself. And thus he tried. He wearied of his search. He whipped himself to effort new. The opening dimmed its light. A shutter seemed to close. The vision he had seen no longer shone. The follower stumbled in the dark. Life ended, and the world of thought was lost. Pendant he seemed. He hung with naught below, before, behind, above. To him, naught was. From deep within the temple of his heart, he heard a word. It spoke with clarity and power. Look deep within, around, on every hand. The light is everywhere. Within the heart, in me, in all that breathes, in all that is. Destroy thy tunnel which thou hast for ages long constructed. Stand free in custody of all the world. The follower answered, how shall I break my tunnel down? How can I find a way? No answer came. Another pilgrim in the dark came up and, groping, found the follower. Lead me and others to the light, he cried. The follower found no words, no indicated leader, no formulas of truth, no forms or ceremonies. He found himself a leader and drew others to the light that shone on every hand. He worked and struggled forward. His hand held others, and for their sake he hid his shame, his fear, his hopelessness, and his despair. He uttered words of surety and faith in life and light and God, in love and understanding. His tunnel disappeared. He noticed not its loss. Upon the playground of the world he stood, with many fellow players, wide to the light of day. In the far distance stood a mountain blue, and from its summit issued forth a voice which said, "Come forward to the mountain top, and on its summit learn the invocation of a Savior." To this great task the follower, now a leader, bent his energies. He still pursues the way. All of these laws of repulse tell us that the process is far from over and that true initiation has yet to be achieved, and by that I mean the first real initiation in the eyes of the hierarchy, namely the third initiation. Right. Let's look at this then. The whole idea of the word direction tells us that the will aspect is involved. And even science, integration, and direction, these are the three factors which lead to the third initiation. The distractions of normal life and normal attachments have been finally dispensed with, and the true disciple, under the influence of a higher form of will, can reach his goal. Well, look at this ecstatic utterance. I love and live and love again. You know, the person is high on his own desire, energy, and especially at this point, it's the energy of aspiration, which is a kind of rising desire. The 2-4-6 line is all along the love line, and the power of magnetism is very important. And the livingness here is the etheric vitality, which is stimulated by a highly energized emotional state. The individual is being carried away, swept along by the power of his own emotional body. And whether it's true love, that's another matter. It seems to be more like a kind of one-pointed devotion towards a particular object of devotion. But there's great energy in it, hence the pursuit of this objective makes the individual feel alive, vital, full of the energy needed in order to accomplish. So its devotion is multiplied. He keeps on trying to love the object of his search even more, to express even more of this magnetism of devotion, which is the reason why "and love again" comes in. I love and live might be enough, but no, this is the ray of undue emphasis, the ray of overdoing. And so the protestations of love and devotion are going to be constant. It wouldn't be surprising if I love and live and love and live and love and live again, as the enthused 6-ray type would have it, overly enthused. He's following something outside himself. Only later does he learn that I am the seeker and the sought. I rest. But at first, that which is sought is outside the self, seen as outside the self. And he's in a frenzy when desire is uncontrolled, and when a particular objective, knows no bounds, is pursued without restraint. Desire builds upon desire and intensifies constantly until there's a total loss of control and desire is carrying everything away. I mean, you think, we hear often of the feeding frenzy of a shark. There, the instinctual desire to eat, to tear apart, to devour takes over everything, and the whole process becomes mad and without control. All calculation is gone. There's just the pursuit of that particular desire, and thus it is with someone who's in a frenzy. The mind is taking a vacation, and the whole being is being swept along by the possibility of fulfilling this desire. Desire builds upon desire, desire feeds desire, and before you know it, there's a total lack of control. Well, the frenzied follower must one day become the wise leader. When upon the mountain blue, he takes initiation. And he cries, this is the response from the astral body, the cry. And it's a cry is reaching out for help, or a strong expression of desire. Again, it's not a speech, which is the reflection of thought. It is a kind of ejaculation, a powerful yearning towards the object of desire. So when a baby cries, he wants something badly. And when the follower cries, he wants something badly, the fulfillment of the vision which he has. I see a vision that satisfies desire, it feeds and stimulates its growth. I lay my life upon the altar of desire. This is the integration formula of the sixth ray. And we get the same idea, pursuit without restraint, pursuit without restraint. I love and live and love again, the frenzy follower cried aloud, not just keeping it to himself, but letting everybody know about it. And this is how it is, with fanatics. They do let everybody know about that which they are attempting to reach. They don't hold it back, and they is so externalized that the desire is so externalized that they simply have to preach to others and direct others or even drag others in the way they are doing, going with many loud words and many speeches that are meant to incite others to follow them. The follower seeks followers. Blinded by his desire for the teacher and the truth. Well, this is a fairly advanced individual here. We're not just talking about desire for worldly things. Of course, along the sixth ray line of development, we could be talking about that which reaches out for that which is material, the desire which reaches out for that which is material. We could be talking about that, but this is at a fairly advanced stage of sixth ray development. So it really is a form of aspiration towards the one who can direct him. It is the teacher. And for the dogma, the particular formulation of truth, a formulation of that which is always so in relation to life and the world that he desires. And he's blinded to all other things. There are many other approaches. There are many other worthy things and values. Many other formulations of the truth, which may be even a better approximation of that which is the truth, though I think, no human being can contain that which is the truth, at least within the human mind. And so we continue. Blinded, not seeing. And this is the effect of the solar plexus upon the mind. The greater the emotion, the less one sees with clarity, and so it becomes possible to be completely blinded by one's desire, one's aspiration, and one's faith. It's kind of the effect of Mars upon Mercury. So he's running after the teacher and the truth, or any other type of elevated objective, and seeing nothing on either side, nothing but that which lays before the eyes. As a matter of fact, when you're trying to discern the sixth ray in another individual, take a look at the eyes, because they will oftentimes have that look of being fixed immediately ahead, and not varying or wavering or moving from the right to the left, left to the right, as can sometimes happen with the third ray type. Also, they can be fixed upward, that kind of devotional attitude of the upward turned eyes, but still straight as they are looking upward. They are not looking towards this or that. They've found what they are looking for, so there's no need to take the eyes off of the objective upon which the eye beam has been riveted. So it's pretty much what lies in the foreground, as we will see, not too far ahead, not immediately before, but just enough to keep the aspiration really burning and the feet moving steadily forward towards the loved, visioned objective. He wore on either side the blinding aids of every fanatic divine adventure. Well, we know the sixth ray animal, the horse, is frequently given blinders to keep their eyes focused straight forward on that which they must do, so that they are not distracted. One of the things that the sixth ray type hates is distraction from the object of his fanatical search. Very much unlike the third ray, which is looking all around on every side at all possible threads or streams of energy that might impinge. There's a very close connection between these two rays in terms of their activism, their activity level, but not in terms of the breadth of their vision, because the wide views on all issues, especially abstract issues, is characteristic of the third ray, but not of the sixth ray. So what are these blinding aids? Well, they are perhaps thought forms or certain formulations of desire which prevent the individual from looking to either side, around on every hand. They do not yet stand at the center and look on every side. They do not do that. They look only straight forward. So we can ask ourselves, how is this individual supported? What exactly is the aid? And oftentimes creeds and truths and self-affirmed or environmentally affirmed thought forms are the blinding aids, which do not even tempt him to look to the side. He can't see beyond the dogma that he embraces, the creed that he embraces. So if you're going to be on a fanatic divine adventure, you need not to be distracted, and certain practices, certain thoughts, certain insistent and repeated desires capture the attention and prevent it from wandering off the chosen path. So a fanatic divine adventure is not known for its breadth. And think of the words, fanatic divine adventure. We have astrologically given the position of Mars in Sagittarius, which is the hierarchical ruler of Sagittarius and the ruler of the lunar lords, which are highly motivated and energized to reach beyond themselves in the case of the aspiring fanatic. So it's a 6-ray Mars and Sagittarius, the sign through which more 6-ray comes than any other sign. These are characteristic of the divine adventure, and not just the divine adventure pursued by a knight errant, but a fanatic divine adventure with only one objective in mind, blind to all other paths that might present. So we have to ask ourselves, what is the nature, or what are the nature of any blinders we may be wearing at this time? What prevents us from seeing the wider picture? How riveted are we on the object of our search? The word search, of course, is another Sagittarian 6-ray word, the word quest, and so forth. Only the long and narrow tunnel was his home and place of high endeavor. He did not leave these particular pursuits. These are the pursuits in which he engaged constantly. And when it came to doing other things in life, he would resent doing them because they were not to the point, were not in the direction that his desires, focused desires, would take him. Here, he would aspire in a high way and mobilize all his faculties, a high endeavor, aiming towards something higher than himself. You don't go on a fanatic divine adventure to pursue something lower, at least not generally, unless you are in the grip of a compulsion. That is possible in some cases, as when a person is captured by a type of mania which drives them down. But here we assume he is aiming for that which is higher than himself, and the long and narrow tunnel is his method of acting and reacting in life and perceiving the nature of life. He has what has been called tunnel vision. That's a popular term, and it means that the individual cannot understand the wider picture. So this tunnel leads straight to the goal, even though the goal can only be envisioned and cannot yet be fully seen. And it is long and narrow. And, you know, it's kind of interesting that sometimes people who have a strong first ray have the long and narrow face, which Master DK actually describes somewhere as characteristic of the 6th ray. See if I can find that. Here is an interesting description of the Master Jesus, who in a way is the prototype of those upon the 6th ray, and presumably at this time he has a Maya Virupa, which is a will-created, imaginatively created form, and which would be in a way emblematic of those who, like himself, are upon this ray. He says he himself is a rather martial figure. This is Initiation Human and Solar, page 56. He himself is a rather martial figure. That tells us the relationship to Mars, of course. A disciplinarian, he's got first ray and this Martian attitude. A man of iron rule and will. How interesting that iron is the particular metal which is ruled by or associated with Mars. He is tall and spare, with a rather long, thin face. That is the indication. And if you observe, of course not in all instances, but you will see that that is oftentimes the indication of a person in whom the sixth ray is powerful. Black hair, pale complexion, connects more with the moon perhaps than the sun, and piercing blue eyes. To be blue-eyed is to be naive or to be an idealist on a higher turn of the spiral. And the piercing quality comes from looking straight forward towards the ideal and allowing nothing to get in the way of that eye beam so that it goes straight towards its goal. So there are hints here about those who find themselves upon the sixth ray. I'm kind of, enthusiastic about this ray because I think I've spent quite a bit of time on this ray, even though it has widened out, I think, into a larger consideration. But I certainly recognize it well. And we need it, this ray. There's 21,000 years more in the sixth ray cycle, the larger sixth ray cycle, which is not just a racial ray cycle, but probably in the nature of a planetary cycle. And DK tells us how, even though there are dangers connected with this ray, it is important that there be workers found upon this ray to arouse, stir, and bring enthusiasm to other workers. So only the long and narrow tunnel was his home. That's where he wants to hang out, only there. And he does not, as DK says, want to lift a finger to do other things or to help others who do not share his particular enthusiasms, although he may bend over backwards to help those who do. So we have, of course, undue emphasis. It's the ray of undue emphasis, and there's overemphasis on this particular path, whatever it may be, and of course it changes because no lasting satisfaction can be found in the acquisition of what this type of vision sees until later when it widens out. And all paths are seen as one path as this ray begins to verge towards the second ray or even towards the third. He had no vision except of that which was the space before his eyes. It's rather limiting, isn't it? He keeps a certain vision before his eyes all the time. And he cannot even see into the far distance because not only is he blind on either side, but he's enwrapped and completely invested in that which appears before his eyes, and it's a self-generated vision. He had no scope. Scope is breadth, generally. No scope for sight. He could not see above, no height. He could not see below. He's not the greatest depth psychologist. He doesn't really know what the higher worlds are, except that he glorifies them. He knows in general, because it's an abstract ray, just like the third ray is. It's not about particulars, although it can be most particular when combined with the fifth ray, which gives the possibility of idée fixe upon certain particulars. When you get the sixth and the fifth ray together, you get the people who believe in the inerrancy of particular Bibles. Every word is correct and true and from God and can never be changed. We see this in a number of the religions today. They don't have the deeper understanding of the human factor that entered into the production of such scriptures. So no breadth here, no real height to discover what God is and the way God functions and the way the higher lives really function. No real understanding of the depths of human nature and what it has been through. No wide extension, that is obvious. He had but room to go one way. His own thoughts, his own desires gave him, by compelling him, room to only go in the direction that they indicated. He would not deviate to the right or the left. nor would he travel too far above or too far below. It's a very circumscribed path that he is on, but it's one that keeps his enthusiasm high and which feeds his energies due to the anticipation of what he will receive when he at last acquires that which he most desires. So desire is feeding upon itself until it doesn't. He went that way alone. I guess this is saying he's not so much of a group worker. He's so obsessed by what he sees that he cannot take the time to understand the natures of those, the desires of other people, the way they hope to live. There's only himself as he conceives himself to be and the object of his search, and not the others in a group, unless, of course, they are so much sharing his particular path, they are so much like him, that he might as well be alone. It's a bunch of people who have exactly the same thing in common, and their eyes are fixed not upon each other in the group process, but upon that which they are pursuing together. And this is interesting. He went that way alone, or dragging those who ask the way of him. He doesn't have any particular respect for the free will of others, and we see this in some religions today, that it's what God says that counts, and that counts only, and not what the individual purposes or wills. So democracy is, which reflects the will of the people, is considered to be rather useless and even against the will of God. Why should man have any say? God's already decided it. So he imposes himself upon other people. Oh, you asked. Well, glad you asked, and now it's out of your hands, it's in my hands, and I'm dragging you along. So enthusiastic that he doesn't ask, would you like to come? No. He actually grabs hold of the others, either physically, mentally, or emotionally, and quite apart from what they may will, brings them along on his path. What they say makes no difference, because he's so convinced of the rightness of his path that he's actually saving and helping others by dragging them along. So there is the tendency here, sometimes confused with the first ray, to impose one's desire and vision upon others and become the motivating power in their forward movement. Here, let me do it for you. It's not that you should do it, I will do it. And I will take your place. My energy and my power will bring you in the direction that you need to be. It's in my hands. We see that both in the sixth ray, and later it modifies into the second ray, where there's an over-responsibility for others and the tendency to do for them rather than have them do for themselves. Rather than wait for another to be truly motivated about the path that they should be taking, he assumes that they must take the path that he will, and he becomes, in a way, their motivation. It doesn't make any difference if their motivation is sort of half what his is. They simply open the door, and he'll take care of it from there. I remember once in my life I did this, dragging people along. They expressed the slightest interest, and that was enough. From there on, I took over. But we see the folly of our ways as we read these descriptions that apply to thousands, even millions, over the century, millennia, and ages. He saw a vision, of course. I see a vision that satisfies the desire. I lay my life upon the altar of the desire, the scene, the sense, that which appeals to me, that answers to my need, whatever that need may be, a need for that which is material, for that which feeds emotion, that satisfies demand, that satisfies the mind, that answers my demand for truth, for service, and my vision of the goal. This is all very similar. It's all from the sixth ray integration formula. And I guess we could wonder whether the law of repulse actually precedes that formula, or follows it. In the book, actually, it precedes the integration formulas, which are in the 300s of the esoteric psychology book, and these are around 160, 170, and so forth of the esoteric psychology book. So maybe this type of reorientation is needed before true integration can occur. Well, he's quite happy to go it alone, especially under the Martian influence, or maybe even under the Neptunian six-ray influence, to pray his way there under Neptune, or dragging the not fully willing along with him, making them see, making them, that idea of imposing energy upon another. Comes in on the first ray, comes in on the third ray, on the sixth ray. He saw a vision, but it's not always a solid vision, is it? Shifting as he moved and taking varying form. There's a certain, as this ray is associated with the astral plane, there's a certain fluidity in this ray, and that which he pursues may not be stable in his sight. He will see different aspects of it, so that, you know, for all his search for certainty, there is a fundamental uncertainty in all of it, which makes him redouble his efforts to be certain and to close out anything that could threaten that certainty. That's one of the key things about people on this type of path. They don't want to hear contradictions. They don't want to entertain reasoning. They don't want to allow in that which could destabilize their unconscious sense of stability or instability. They already feel unstable, which is why they are emphasizing their particular path so much. They want certainty above all, because they're not wide enough in their understanding to establish the real certainty, which is based on the mind and on understanding. So it took varying forms of this vision ahead of him, but it didn't make any difference how it changed. Each vision was to him the symbol of his highest dreams, the height of his desire. He's running along the path, and even though the modification of the vision occurs, he still gives his fullness to it. Even if it varies in some way significantly from what he thought he was pursuing. Now this, oh, now this is better, oh, this is still better. The symbol of his highest dreams and the height of his desire, because he doesn't know how to throttle back. He's got his foot on the pedal all the way, and there is no real moderation here, not at first. This is in many ways the ray of immoderation. He saw a vision, shifting as he moved, and taking varying forms. Each vision was to him the symbol of his highest dreams, the height of his desire. Sometimes I think in the life of Annie Besant, who had a six-ray, personality, there were many paths pursued ardently, and they were paths quite different from each other. And each one was seen to be most important at the time, to which one gave everything, until, of course, one wearied of it. What's that book? The Last 5 Lives of Annie Besant. I don't know all of these paths, but some of them, you know, the path of the married woman and mother, the path of the social reformer, the path of the ardent theosophist. Those are just 3, and there were others along the way. What is important to this type is they keep going towards the goal. It's just this drive from within to reach the vision. Even if the vision changed, the drive is still there. And the benefit of the doubt is given to the new vision, and then all the energy is given to that vision, whatever it may be. I remember the way I used to, use these little anecdotes, but I used to pursue singing quite a bit. I was interested in opera, became an opera director, and I really wanted to express myself through the voice. And I look at the way that I pursued singing. It was so one-pointed. I would buy a book with all the Schubert songs. Let's say there were 600 of them, 3 volumes, and I'd sing through them all, one after another, because Schubert was my great enthusiasm at the time. And then I would do that with other composers. My poor voice, it couldn't take it because the desire to do this was so strong that it disrespected the natural limits. And that's one of the things here, the disrespect for natural limits. It's not much in the world, shall we say. Common sense is sometimes lacking. All right, well, this is the general condition. He's on the move. And here's the word, rush. He rushed along the tunnel, not just walked, not reasonably, not looking at what's happening along the way or thinking about the different possible encounters. There are few encounters that are not directed particularly towards the goal. D.K. tells us in one of the important stanzas, there is no rush, no hurry, and yet there is no time to lose. So this is the rules of the road. There is no rush, no hurry. Well, there's plenty of rush here. And he sometimes tells his students how much in the grip of emotion they are when they are rushing, and that even enthusiasm is a state of the astral body. So there is immoderate haste here, and the other parts of the nature suffer because of the rush. Haste makes waste, and so many things that should be done are not done. Many things that should not be done are done. You cannot live a life of consideration and caution when you're rushing. He rushed along the tunnel, seeking that which lay ahead. How much did he see? He saw not much. And this is the interesting thing, and only one thing at a time. Let's say you're playing chess. You're on the third ray, and you see many, many moves ahead, and you think of all these contingencies, what might happen and what you will do, and you have a strategy and all that. There's no strategy here. And there's no consideration of many things and their interactions and how they aspect each other. Just one thing. And this has to do with this whole quest through one life or through many lives. One life it may be a person, another life it may be a truth, another a Bible or his picture of his God, another may be an appetite, something that he just loves to do, something that can never really be satisfied, but he has an appetite for it, or a dream in another life, but only one thing at a time. The particularity of this type is quite interesting. They invest everything in the one. Of course, one day it may be the one, and they may understand with a broadened and inclusive idealism that all things are the one. That would be a widening of this ray. But interesting, you can't count on broad perception here. You can count on single-mindedness, one thing in the mind only at a time. What is it for us? Are we affected by this particular ray? We might as well admit it if we are. Many of us have come out of the mystical tradition during the past 2,000 years when the sixth ray was so strong and we've been strongly influenced by it. Even Master D.K., a great enthusiast, the story goes that he... what was it, a story from Master M or KH or something? He was so enthusiastic about something, rushing straight forward, that he just hit his head against the door or something of that nature and broke his nose, something like that. Great devotion there. But he had great devotion to his teacher, Master KH, and even his devotion, as he later told us, was the cause of his temporary downfall in that incarnation when he was, quote-unquote, a young man. Not necessarily a rich young man, but a young man. Could be like the second initiation, you see, when the sixth ray is so strong. He saw not much, and only one thing at a time. He doesn't sit back and consider the many interactions. Only one thing. His mind has space for one thing to which he gives his all, but only one. Now, what about the satisfaction involved here? Is there any? So he actually, he has these temporary goals. They may change, and then he runs after that which has taken the place of the former one with equal enthusiasm, but Why do they change? And I think it's because sometimes of dissatisfaction. Sometimes he gathered in his arms the vision that he saw. He reached it, and it just disappeared in his hands. It was not at all what he thought, not at all the answer to every dream, and that which would satisfy desire. He found it wanting, lacking, even nothing, just like vapor. But on to the next. Sometimes he reached the person whom he loved and found, instead of vision beauty, a person like himself. Well, that's called disillusionment, isn't it? And you see this all the time with sixth-rate people putting others on a pedestal. They worship them at first, but also plot the downfall of the pedestaled person. And then there's a great disrespect and spurning. The very one who adored finds reasons to repel and disrespect. So there is always a contrast between what the imagination says about the object of the search and that which reality presents, or actuality presents, when that person is really reached and you be with the person, you live with the person, you know, like they say warts and all. This is, at first, there's an airbrushed image, and then you get up close, as they say, up close and personal, as the sixth-ray type will always be, and he sees imperfections. Oh, my goodness, imperfections. We can't love something that is imperfect. The highest light must control. So this is the ray of the pursuit of perfection, very intolerant of the flaws, foibles, the human fallibilities which are ever to be found, even in great individuals, even in initiates. There's always the shadow side. As long as we live on the earth at this time, we are not yet totally transparent, radiant, light beings. Instead of vision beauty, a person like himself. Oh, I never thought you could be that way. You know, when I first met you, I thought this, and now what do I see? And then the so-called love is removed. And thus he tried. He kept on trying. This is the thing. This is a ray of incredible persistence. Try and try again until you're just exhausted. And thus he tried. He wearied of his search because he keeps on being disillusioned. Every time he sees something, he thinks that's it forever. Just like heaven is it forever. Paradise is it forever. That's it. I'm home. I'm there in perfection forever. What about you? Okay. Wearied of his search. But, of course, being on the Martian sixth ray, he could re-motivate himself by whipping himself into a new frenzy of pursuit. Reminds one of the flagellation which is occurring under the fourth subray of the sixth ray. DK gives us an idea of that. He whipped himself to effort new. He cannot allow himself to remain unmotivated. He has to sting himself into hot pursuit once again. It may not be a true motivation, but at least he gets all whipped up, reminding himself of certain things, repeating certain things, reaffirming certain beliefs until the astral body catches hold and he's ready to go again. Okay. But we see that this can't last forever because it's based on kind of an external motivation and a reaching for that which is not within the self, but which is always external to him, and obviously the seeker and the sought are one. So we cannot forever pursue that which is outside ourselves. Here's his tunnel. The opening dimmed its light. You know, the light at the end of the tunnel always keeps you motivated so you can keep going. I see the light at the end of the tunnel. I know there's something wonderful there, so at least I keep going. But what happens when the opening dims its light? The light is inherently attractive, magnetic, and motivating. What happens to your motivation when that light is no longer to be seen? A shutter, just like the shutter of a camera, or that which blocks out the light of the sun, a blind, as we call it. A shutter seemed to close. The vision he had seen no longer shone, even a whole series of visions, each of which could keep him reasonably motivated to keep his pursuit going. The vision he had seen no longer shone. All the visions he had seen no longer shone. Nothing to lure him forward. Nothing within yet to keep him going like the first ray or second ray has, something within ourselves. The vision he had seen no longer shone. This is, sometimes called the crisis of the loss of faith. We sometimes read in these religious orders and of the priest or the minister or the nun or whatever, religious person who loses their faith. They no longer see the vision. They are no longer motivated by what they were before. They no longer believe in God, the great attractive source. The followers stumbled in the dark because without that, it's dark now. The light's not coming in to shed some light upon his path within the tunnel. Doesn't know where he's going. Can't see that which is before his feet. There's no light. The light of the vision is gone. I'm reminded of a movie. I didn't see it. I wanted to see it, but it was about a priest who had an affair, lured off his path or allowing his emotions to take him off his path. And it was called The Runner Stumbled. The title appealed to me. Those who know where they're going have a certain tread, a certain pace. Whether they're walking fast or they're running, they keep going, But when an obstacle comes up and you don't see it, you lose your momentum, you stumble, you fall down. So that which was for him life ended. Not that he ceased breathing, but everything that he considered to be worthwhile in his life ended. And the world of thought was lost because his thought process is repetitious. Just think of what it must be to have a six-ray mind. Of course, the Buddha had this on an extremely high level. But the Catholic Church is said to have a six-ray mind, and there's a great deal of the repetition of dogma. Well, what happens when the dogma falls apart, when it's no longer attractive, when it's no longer seen as representing the truth, when it just doesn't pay off? You don't get the rewards from the dogma, from these repeated thoughts that you thought you would get. It fails to give you life. Life ended, and the world of thought was lost. Complete enervation. Thought, one can think towards a certain objective. And that's the way the six-ray types are. Their thinking is about how to get there, how to adore, appreciation for that which they long for. The mainspring then of thought would be gone because it's not about examining the world. It's not about learning like the fifth ray type would do or the third ray type. The thought is all aimed at the acquisition of the objective. Life ended. And the world of thought was lost. He seems to hang in midair, mid-heaven, as it tells us under the Blessed One for the sixth ray. There the monad, I think, is involved. Pendant, he seemed, hanging in mid-space as if. Nothing. It's darkness, nothing to see, nothing to envision, nothing to attract, no interest in that which is around, nothing. He hung with naught, below, before, behind, above. Well, each one of these directions tells us something. Does he have a basis, a foundation? His faith in something was the foundation. It's gone. Nothing to hold his feet up. Before, there's nothing to draw him onward. There's no vision ahead. Behind is his tradition of pursuit, and all of that has been shown to be worthless. He cannot rely upon or depend upon or somehow be energized by that through which he has been, because it's all proved to be worthless. And what is it above that he would be pursuing? He doesn't know. Nothing above attracts him. There is no heaven. People who lose their faith in God, what is heaven then? What are the higher realms? They don't exist. He hung with naught below, before, behind, above. To him, naught was. It's just a deep depression. Blackness. You know how it is when people cease to be motivated. Even, there are certain sections of the day when your energy may be such that you say to yourself, I just can't do a thing. I don't want to do a thing. Every time you think of wanting to do something, you don't want to. And you just stay there in that funk. But this is more permanent, of course. This is a real existential crisis, not a moment of lack of energy or lack of desire. Nothing, he's pursued so many things that nothing can reanimate him. Oftentimes, there is in people's lives, they're depressed about the loss of something, and something new comes in and it reanimates. By reanimation, we oftentimes mean the astral body, again, is energized and a vision arises, which is desired and then pursued. Reanimation, of course, really means that the soul offers its energy to the individual, and what's this? Sometimes I get discouraged and think my work is done, but then the Holy Spirit revives my soul again. It's an old song, an old spiritual. There is a balm in Gilead. It's all about how the Holy Spirit reanimates you, or some higher force. But here, he's expended his desire energy. It just isn't anymore. At least nothing from without can attract him. Sometimes, as psychologists, we may run into people like this who have been so disillusioned, so discouraged by everything they pursued, that they don't want to pursue anything anymore. Nothing looks worth the pursuit. Nothing. So now we know it's time for the soul to act, because the individual has become, shall we say, almost teachable. So maybe, there's always an intervention of the soul in these laws of repulse, and this is the moment for it. And when we're studying these laws of repulse, it's always interesting to see how the soul intervenes. God destroys the garden. Ray 1. Ray 2. The thinker is tending the garden of his thought, and sudden a spade descends and destroys all the passages of mind and the storehouse of coveted content. Ray 3. There is a movement of all the forces within and without, and the window breaks. Ray 4, the note of God, crashing note of God is heard, the great chord of God. Ray 5, a key comes down from the summit, from the opening on the summit of the pyramid. The invocation has been made, give me the key, I alone can do no more good, give me the key. Silence reigned, and then the key came down. Here's Ray 6. The soul makes its presence known. From deep within the temple of his heart, he heard a word. Well, when you see a capital W, a word, it is the word of the soul, who's finally speaking some wisdom here about the kind of pursuit which for lifetimes the sixth ray type has been engaged in. He heard a word. And there's no uncertainty about this word, because the person is now teachable. It spoke with clarity and power. And, the sixth-ray type has been looking without all the time. You know, the truth, the goal, the eminently desirable was always out there, never in there. It's a stage of consciousness. It's a kind of naive extraversion of the consciousness, and we all have to become introverts of a certain kind. Doesn't mean that we become antisocial and incapable of interacting with others in any happy or cheerful, animated way. It means we begin to look within. That's the real meaning of introversion. So look deep within, not superficiality, not the shallows. No, there was no scope for sight, no height, no depth, no wide extension. Everything's superficial before. It's got to be fast. It's got to be immediate. It's under Mars. It's got to satisfy immediately. Instant gratification, or the thought at least that there will be a great gratification. So we become gratified by thinking there will be gratification. So that's our instant gratification. But look deep within, around, on every hand, on all sides. This is not a counsel towards the sustainment of tunnel vision. Look deep within. The kingdom of God is within. What does that mean? Jesus was saying that, or the Christ through him was saying that to his disciples. The kingdom of God is within. Well, where is the within? To the extroverted consciousness, there is no within. But now he's stopped. Can't go. Can't blind his consciousness by further pursuit. So he stopped. And now he can reorient. There's a reorientation here. And look on every side. Because what you have been pursuing can be found everywhere. You've been pursuing the light, the truth, the teacher. The light is everywhere. Oh, that's a threatening thought to the sixth-ray type. I remember an associate. I said, well, look, there is the ageless wisdom. He said, no, there's the Bible. But don't you want to maybe consider what the ageless wisdom has to say? No, I'm afraid to do that. It could shake my faith. It could some way compromise my path, my belief. Fear. Fear is one of those things that helps sustain the blinders. Because out there is danger, only straight ahead. The one true way, there lies safety. So fear is a great factor in keeping people on the so-called straight and narrow. The straight and narrow is good at some times, of course. You do have to close your eyes to that which lies on the side and your ears to all the outer voices. This is the first-ray technique. First ray and sixth ray have a lot in common, as Mars, I think, has much of the first ray in it as well as the sixth ray. Even Neptune does. Neptune is one of those 3 planets, I think, which represent a great first ray being. It certainly has the power of dissolution and destruction. The light is everywhere, within the heart. See, that's the very first thing. Now, we're talking about the contrast between the solar plexus and the heart. And we have been solar plexus centered in this pursuit. As we begin to move on to the second ray, it is the inclusive organ called the heart, the group organ, which is going to be stimulated. So first look to your own core, your heart, the very center of your being where the life aspect resides. So this voice, the voice of the soul, which is in a way the heart of the monad, directs the consciousness of the follower to the heart. And in me, capital M, me. Who's me? Who's talking? It's the soul. It's who you really are. It's your higher self. It's that within you which is eminently worth pursuit and understanding. It's not outward anymore. There's a difference between following an outer source and following your own heart, following your own soul. So the consciousness of this individual is being reoriented. The light is everywhere. Within the heart, in me, and even wider. In all that breathes, in all life. In all sentient beings. I suppose even in the rocks. Do they breathe? Depends on what we call breath. There's probably some exchange of energy. In all that breathes, in all that is. What an inclusive statement. That which you pursue is everywhere. In all that breathes, and all that is. And this voice could have said, the love is there, the power is there. Anything that you think worthwhile, it's everywhere. Not just in your long and narrow tunnel. So, destroy thy tunnel. Destroy your particular mode of narrow perception. Allow your eyes to look to the right, to the left, above, below. Allow that. Do not keep on repeating always the same mantrams, dogmas, creeds. Just remain open to the input from other aspects of the world which you have shut out through the intensity of your desire. Destroy thy tunnel, which thou hast for ages long constructed over many, many lives. So desperate were you to reach the one secure thing, which would mean you didn't have to pursue anymore because you would have found it, and then you can rest forever in heaven or wherever. So this is the voice speaks the word, and that voice from the soul sees a number of lives in which this type of behavior has been operative. Destroy thy tunnel, which thou hast for ages long constructed. Stand free. Because, the sixth ray type is extremely hemmed in by what he tells himself or his teachers have told him or what the authorities of the book or whatever has told him. He is bound. He is a slave of certain thought forms, certain patterns of thought. But stand free now, away from all that, and own the whole world. Stand free in custody of all the world. The world is yours, not just one small part of it. Embrace the world in all of its variety, suggesting here the third ray, the great variety of the world, a ray closely related to the sixth, and one of the rays onto which the sixth ray soul can gravitate, to which the sixth ray soul can gravitate. One of the rays in which that soul can make a transition, along with the second. So open your arms up. It's kind of interesting here, spread your arms wide. The first ray type in the integration formulas is told something similar, at least in DK's description of those integration formulas. It says he has to learn how to stand and regain love and divine feeling and spread his arms out wide. So reach then more for the world and release yourself from the things which compelled you for ages to go only one way at a time. Well, obviously the voice has authority because it spoke with clarity and power. And now we have a follower. He just loves authority. So he's going to ask the voice, how shall I break my tunnel down? Because by now, he believes what the voice has to say. He believes the word that has come forth from the heart. Because he's so disillusioned. How can I find a way? Not necessarily the way, but a way to do that. But, just the way silence reigned for the despairing fifth ray type when he said, give me the key, so silence is reigning again. No answer came, and life will speak. That's the thing. When no immediate answer comes from some authority, life itself will give the answer. And here comes the answer. Another pilgrim in the dark. Still dark. He's dark. no new light has really come. And that pilgrim is also wandering in the dark. Another pilgrim in the dark came up and, groping, found the follower. No vision is being used. Sight has failed. The sixth ray is associated with the sense of touch. At least in the early senses, it is, Seventh ray, in a way, the sense of hearing. Third ray also. Sixth ray, a sense of touch. Fifth ray, vision, in as much as the mind, to which the fifth ray gives access to vision as well. So the sixth ray types feel their way. And when things appeal to their feelings, they go. And when things do not appeal to the feelings or have a repulsive emotional effect upon them, they are repelled and they do not go. So here comes this seeker who has no real eyesight. He's feeling his way along through life, but he found the follower. Well, you know how a follower may look to another follower. A follower may look like a leader. And sure enough, this is a less experienced groper, someone who's coming along in the dark and has not necessarily been sufficiently disillusioned like our particular follower has been. And this follower cries, he cries again, you see. It's the type of expression which is common to the astral body, the cry. It expresses a great need. That's what cries do. Lead me, lead, there's the first word, lead. The follower needs a leader, so lead me and others, or maybe behind me, to the light. Is it the light? Is it the love? Is it the power? It doesn't make any difference. Let's call it light, at least on our planet, which is meant to become a great demonstration of light. Lead me and others to the light, he cried. Well, this is the challenge. This is the wake-up call. The follower has been very disillusioned. Our follower. The follower found no words. He's gone through them all. He knows the worthlessness of them. He knows that eventually they will fail to satisfy. And he found no leader himself that he is following. Because it's always easy when somebody comes up. I can do this all the time. What shall I do about life? Oh, study Master DK. No problem. Study Master DK. So, you could say, well, I may not be a leader, but there's a leader, so you can follow him. The follower found no words, no indicated leader. It didn't seem that he should point out somebody for our new follower to follow. No formulas of truth. Well, if you believe this creed, how we used to do in church or whatever. I conducted choirs for so many years in churches that I ended up understanding these creeds that were said. Is it the Apostles' Creed? You have to say that every Sunday, and it always seemed terribly limited to me. So I never could get myself really to give assent to it unless I reinterpreted it, using another ray. No indicated leader, no formulas of truth. Just believe this and you'll be fine. No forms or ceremonies, Do these things and all will be well. Go through these ritualistic patterns and everything is taken care of for you. Then you will be on safe ground and you will have the light and find the truth. Even certain forms can give people reassurance. Here's the form of the cross, or whatever form you want to give yourself to. Here are holy forms. Hold these before your eyes. But our disillusioned follower cannot offer any of those things which did not work for him, especially, at least at length. Suddenly, he is undergoing an identity change here, because in the eyes of others, he has become a leader, and he has to act like one. So it's interesting follow the leader, the follower becomes the leader. At what point? When he begins to look within and find his own strength within. So, out of compassion and out of the realization of the relative blindness of this other follower, even more blind than he has to assume the role of the leader. And magnetically, he drew others to the light, which he begins to sense all around, just like the voice said. The light is everywhere, within the heart, in me, in all that breathes, and all that is. The tunnel, you see, is being slowly broken down, even though he doesn't really realize that. Because instead of following a particular vision, he has to look towards the needs of others. And that begins to arrest his attention. And those needs are many, and they are various, and they have to be met in different ways. It's quite a different psychology, following this one thing, and actually paying attention, more like a psychologist would, on the second ray, to the needs of others. It's a different approach. So he's beginning to realize the light is shining on every hand. It's not immediate, but it's happening. He's a vigorous type. There is more light now. He's not in darkness, because meeting the needs of others does provide light, it being better to give than to receive, it being better to serve than be served. So remember how the fifth ray type is struggling, he's toiling. The sixth ray type does work and continues to struggle forward, but with others. This is interesting. And not dragging them. He's not dragging them along regardless of what they need or what they will. His hand holds others. This is more a second ray kind of thing. It doesn't just grab your wrist and say, this way. His hand held others. And because he's now thinking of them and not just of his own selfish satisfaction, reaching heaven, reaching the highest desire, the highest dream he possibly can, he's thinking of them. And so for their sake, he hid his internal state, which is not yet one of a realized person, his shame, because he's never lived up to his high ideals, his fear that he may be on the wrong path or has been on the wrong path, or his fear that he may never find the light, that he will not be successful, fear of failure, that great fear of disciples. His hand held others, and for their sake, he hid his shame, his feeling of worthlessness, his hopelessness. Because after all, he hasn't, where is the light? But need presents itself, and he's meeting the need. So for a little while, he forgets his intense desire for salvation and for liberation and for the great all-consuming light and love and God and all these things that will mean he never has to work again, like that. His hand held others, and for their sake, he hid his shame, his fear, his hopelessness that he may never reach his objective, and his despair in the blackness. He has no time for that anymore, because he has to meet the need of someone else. And because he begins to feel for them, the heart energy is beginning to be activated here, he uttered words of surety, because they are unstable just as he was, and faith to keep them on the right track so that they will not wander off and be destroyed. Uttered words of surety and faith in life, the whole living process. Life is benevolent, and light, the light will find you. The light is everywhere. The light is here. You will find the light, and God. No loss of faith here. There is a great, benevolent, loving, and powerful intelligence who cares. Faith in love and understanding that there is a heart communion between people which makes worth life worth living. So he says all the right things to encourage the others because he feels for them now, because his energy is rising from his solar plexus to his heart, and naturally he begins to feel in a wider sense and respond to the needs of others. His selfishness is evaporating because, to rush along the tunnel seeking what you want, oblivious of anybody else and anything else, or just maybe grabbing someone else and say, come this way, that's all selfish. And the blow against selfishness has to be struck. And I think it's particularly struck at the second initiation, which is in a way a Martian and sixth-ray initiation, and Mars being a major planet of selfishness. One's own urges become so insistent that that's all one cares about and just deals with those. But Jupiter, Venus, and Neptune come in at the second initiation, and those are moderators of the Martian selfishness, and also much associated with the heart, or with lifting to the heart in the case of Neptune. So his words give comfort, encouragement, hope, allay the fears, give dignity, and give a trust in the larger picture. And as he gives these things, of course, he begins to develop these things. His despair will begin to evaporate. His hopelessness will turn to hope. His fear to confidence. His shame to a feeling of self-worth. And his tunnel disappear. Gradually, by means of the process in which he's engaged in helping others, his tunnel disappeared. But he is so engaged in the service, in helping, taking his eyes off himself for a change and his own desires, that he noticed not the loss of the tunnel. It's just disintegrating all around him, and he's living in a much wider world. And he then realizes, where's my tunnel? Where are those pursuits that I pursued so avidly and exclusively? Where are they? They no longer exist because he stands in custody of all the world. His tunnel disappeared. He noticed not its loss. Upon the playground of the world he stood with many fellow players, wide to the light of day. Well, that's the image. DK talks about the different stages of man, the red of desire, and then you go out onto the green playground where people are pursuing their games. All around him, people are playing at life, but he has now a deeper understanding and is able to help his fellow players, which he realizes are as himself, or certainly as he was. It's not at this point that he's really playing on the field of green. I sometimes think of golf courses, out there having fun in the exercise of activity. It's fine. It's a stage. We like to go out and be active and have fun on the green playground. But the point is, it's a wide world now. And he notices all around him, many are playing, but all those who play are not necessarily happy. And so he's going to have to do something about that. It's not just the light at the end of the tunnel or the false light. In German they call it Irrlicht. It means like will-o'-the-wisp. It's marsh gas. It's false light. It leads you into glamour. You follow this and it may lead you right into the swamp. It's a false light. The light that leads astray. Not that anymore. But the light of the sun is shining, and we've seen that the sun stands for the soul. Interesting, too, some battles have been won because the light of day is emblematic of Scorpio. There's different kinds of light for each one of the zodiacal signs, as you know. Right around page 330 or so in esoteric astrology. Whoop. Oh, what happened? Press the wrong button again. But there it is, Scorpio, the light of day. This is the place where three lights meet, the light of form, the light of soul, and the light of life. They meet, they blend, they rise. So Illumination is possible in the scorpionic phase of meditation, the light of day. I'm going to press that and try again. Whoops, no good. Oh, sounds like a freight train. I'll have to fix that, which will do in just a moment. The light of day. So things are now much better, and some joy is coming into the life, and the realization of usefulness, and the realization that the light is indeed everywhere. Because in this synthesis of lights that we'll call the light of the day, but which certainly involves the light of the soul, and even an intimation of higher light, another goal presents itself. But this is not just in a tunnel. This is another much wider goal, which indicates future usefulness and a transition possibly off this ray onto a still higher ray, although let it be understood that it doesn't mean that you can't stay on one of the rays of attribute, even up to the fourth initiation, and who knows beyond. Those rays of attribute can even characterize your sub-monadic life, assuming that the monad has a sub-ray, which I do assume. A number of references indicate that, including reference on page 176 of Cosmic Fire. It talks about the three main rays and the 7 sub-rays. So, a voice is heard. In the far distance stood a mountain blue, and from its summit issued forth a voice which said. Now, what is this voice? Is this the voice of the soul? Is this the voice of the initiator? Is this the voice of the Christ? Come forward to the mountain top, and on its summit learn the invocation of a Savior, how to invoke the life aspect, how to invoke God, Sanat Kumara, how to invoke the divine will and the purpose. It's an invitation. Come forward to the mountaintop, and on its summit learn the invocation of a Savior. And it's a mountain blue again. Remember how the blue of heaven was involved in the fifth ray and giving the perspective of the soul, of the heavenly blue. Maybe the Buddhic perspective from the planetary logoic point of view, because Buddhi is blue from the planetary logoic point of view. Blue heaven, that which reflects the great second ray of our solar system, and of course the light blue is associated with this sixth ray, and maybe a much deeper shade of blue with the second ray, although sometimes it's been said that the esoteric color of the second ray is light blue, but that probably is from a previous solar system. So in the far distance stood a mountain blue, a mountain in which love and wisdom will be known, a mountain which promises the revelation of the great second aspect of divinity, very magnetic. And of course, the sixth ray type is aligned with this type of magnetism. The sixth and the second ray are, well, the sixth ray is the more concrete aspect of the second. And from its summit issued forth a voice, let's call it the voice of the initiator or the voice of the higher self, that said, come forward to the mountaintop. An effort is required, right? And on its summit, learn the invocation of a Savior. So we have not yet really climbed the mountain of initiation, true initiation. This law of repulse is operative at a time before true initiation. And of course, the real Savior is of the fourth or fifth or sixth degree. So one has to learn how to invoke those energies which will make of one a Savior, because the man, having demonstrated that he can care enough about others to stop feeling sorry for himself in the blackness with naught below, before, behind, above, he's demonstrated that he has within him the seed of the Savior. And I suppose a number of those upon the sixth ray do become that, although we also need to study those sixth ray souls who do become third ray souls. DK tells us this in the instructions to HSD, one of his disciples who was a sixth-ray soul. He talks about the transition that can be made to the sixth ray or to the third ray or the second ray, but he talks more about the second ray and not really what happens when the transition is made to the third ray, although I think there is a high idealism in both types, sixth and third ray. So it is a great task, it's a demanding task, and there is a coming together now of the idea of follower and leader. To this great task, the follower, now a leader. Notice, interesting, not in capital L. The follower, now a leader, bent his energies. So he still has that same intensity. But it's a wiser type of intensity, and the goal, of course, is now altruistic. And it's not so self-intent, my salvation, my peace, my satisfied desire, my vision of reality, or my dream, my limited ideal, my finite, my. It's not that anymore. It's now the thou, the you, is involved here. And thus, he's entitled to be a leader. To this great task, the follower, now a leader, bent his energies. The fifth ray and the sixth ray are very good at bending energies towards a certain point. And this operative word for the sixth ray, pursues. He still pursues this way. Now eventually it will be the way of higher evolution. The sixth ray types seek to swing into that radiant place of light where stood the door upon the higher way. But he still has initiation before him and great sacrifice at the fourth degree, and then it will be possible to begin thinking about pursuing the way of higher evolution. Well, this has been a longer one, a longer commentary. It's more like 2 pages rather than 1. And sometimes the commentaries at the end get a bit longer because we're dealing with the concrete rays. And there's more detail to handle, just the way the technique of integration for the fifth ray is very long by comparison. And we'll get to that. We'll talk about that. At first I thought I should do the techniques of integration first, but now I see actually that in the book they are placed after the law of repulse. So maybe it was not an unwise decision. Now, with the understanding that we have been gathering, let us again look at the whole of it and see what it means to us, the direction of Ray 6. I love and live and love again, the frenzied follower cried aloud, blinded by his desire for the teacher and the truth, but seeing naught but that which lay before his eyes. He wore on either side the blinding aids of every fanatic divine adventure. Only the long and narrow tunnel was his home and place of high endeavor. He had no vision except of that which was the space before his eyes. He had no scope for sight, no height, no depth, no wide extension. He had but room to go one way. He went that way alone, or dragging those who asked the way of him. He saw a vision, shifting as he moved and taking varying form. Each vision was to him the symbol of his highest dreams, the height of his desire. He rushed along the tunnel, seeking that which lay ahead. He saw not much, and only one thing at a time. A person or a truth, a Bible or his picture of his God, an appetite, a dream, but only one. Sometimes he gathered in his arms the vision that he saw and found it not. Sometimes he reached the person whom he loved and found, instead of vision beauty, a person like himself. And thus he tried. He wearied of his search. He whipped himself to effort new. The opening dimmed its light. The shutter seemed to close. The vision he had seen no longer shone. The follower stumbled in the dark. Life ended, and the world of thought was lost. pendant he seemed. He hung with naught below, before, behind, above. To him naught was. From deep within the temple of his heart he heard a word. It spoke with clarity and power. Look deep within, around, on every hand. The light is everywhere, within the heart, in me, in all that lives, in all that breathes, in all that is. Destroy thy tunnel, which thou hast for ages long constructed. Stand free in custody of all the world. The follower answered, How shall I break my tunnel down? How can I find a way? No answer came. Another pilgrim in the dark came up, and groping found the follower. Lead me and others to the light, he cried. The follower found no words, no indicated leader, no formulas of truth, no forms or ceremonies. He found himself a leader and drew others to the light that shone on every hand. He worked and struggled forward. His hand held others, and for their sake he hid his shame, his fear, his hopelessness, and his despair. He uttered words of surety and faith in life and light and God, in love and understanding. His tunnel disappeared. He noticed not its loss. Upon the playground of the world he stood with many fellow players, wide to the light of day. In the far distance stood a mountain blue, and from its summit issued forth a voice which said, Come forward to the mountain top, and on its summit learn the invocation of a Savior. To this great task, the follower, now a leader, bent his energies. He still pursues the way. Okay. That should give us, he still pursues this way, not the way. He still pursues this way. All right, well, the important thing in all of these stanzas is somehow for us to recognize ourselves, where we are on the path, what we are doing, what is our next step, so we can do it better, more intelligently, more effectively, and doing it be more useful. That is our objective. All right, well, that one took quite a bit longer than the others. And now we'll just go on. We'll have an ohm. Let's have an ohm separating this from the next commentary on the Old Commentaries. Have an ohm. Use that ohm to seal the thoughts which have been generated. A member of my class used to say that every time. Said, well, wait, can't leave yet. Must sound the ohm to seal what has been done. And I think he was right about that. All right. Now we'll go on to number 7, the last commentary on the Law of Repulse, commentary for Ray 7. Pause just for a moment here. Okay, here we are. The direction of Ray 7. I think maybe, I'm more qualified to comment on Ray 6, but we'll make an effort here. Under an arch between two rooms, the seventh magician stood. One room was full of light and life and power, of stillness which was purpose, and a beauty which was space. The other room was full of movement, a sound of great activity, a chaos without form, of work which had no true objective. The eyes of the magician were fixed on chaos. He liked it not. His back was towards the room of vital stillness. He knew it not. The arch was tottering overhead. He murmured in despair, "For ages I have stood and sought to solve the problem of this room, to rearrange the chaos so that beauty might shine forth in the goal of my desire. I sought to weave these colors into a dream of beauty and to harmonize the many sounds. Achievement lacks. Naught but my failure can be seen. And yet I know there is a difference between that which I can see before my eyes and that which I begin to sense behind my back. What shall I do?" Above the head of the magician, and just behind his back, and yet within the room of ordered beauty, a magnet vast began to oscillate. It caused the revolution of the man within the arch, which tottered to a future fall. The magnet turned him round until he faced the scene and room unseen before. Then through the center of his heart the magnet poured its force attractive. The magnet poured its force repulsive. It reduced the chaos until its forms no longer could be seen. Some aspects of a beauty unrevealed before emerged, and from the room a light shone forth, and by its powers and life forced the magician to move forward into light and leave the arch of peril. I'm reminded of one of the glamours of the seventh ray is the ability to sit on the fence until the selfish values emerge. Let's see if I can find that. It's interesting. Well, I think it's in a different place. It's in a different place. It's somewhere here in Esoteric Psychology, Volume 2, around what page? Let's see. Somewhere in here, I think. Or the Blessed Ones. Here we go. Oh my. I guess until I'm not going to see this. Well, there's only one fence, so let's just see. Yep, the power to sit upon the fence till the selfish values emerge. Ray 7. In that we see something of the arch. It's the arch of peril, and it's tottering overhead. This is on page 43 of Esoteric Psychology, Volume 2. So there is a division. There's an arch between two rooms. And it's not just the magician, it's the seventh magician. It's as if all of the beings who are essentially souls are magicians. But here is the one who is seventh in order and most adept at the magical process. And what are these two rooms? Well, let's take a look at a map. Yeah. it would be here, and let's try this. Whoop. Let's look at this map. There we go. Notice there is here a dotted line, and it separates the 18 lower subplanes of mind, emotions, and body, etheric, physical, from the higher three subplanes of the higher mind and the world wherein the soul is found, and from all of the cosmic ethers, where a still more authentic archetype of God's plan and purpose can be found. So I look at this arch as kind of that which separates the world of becoming from the world of being, in a loose sense, and also the sublunar world from the solar world, the elemental world from the more solar angelic world. In short, the world of the personality separated from the world of the soul. Under an arch between two rooms, so these rooms are dimensions. They are vibratory spaces. They are inner environments. Of course, there is also an outer environment in the lower of the two rooms, but there are also the subtle worlds, which are inner aspects of the room, and they too have to be brought to right arrangement and order. So the seventh type of jiva, the seventh magician, is standing. Again, he's standing. He's not sitting. He has an active job to do. And it depends pretty much on him. It doesn't depend on using a loom, let us say, because you can stand at the loom, but it's a long process, and eventually you'll have to sit down, One room was full of light and life and power. Well, we can call that the world of the soul, the light of the soul, the life of the soul, the power of the soul. And we can also look at the higher realms within the cosmic ethers, towards which man aspires, the Buddhic level and so forth, the area in which the divine plan is taking form, the Atmic level, of stillness, which was purpose. Be still and know that I am God. Be still enough with respect to the chitta of your mind and the desire stuff of the astral plane, so that it does not obscure the purpose. So there is a great stillness, in a way, on the higher levels compared to the chaos of the sublunar worlds. It's interesting that purpose should really be located on the cosmic physical plane in the monadic world and above. Now, in the monadic world, we have 7 great forms, sound forms. We might almost call them, in a language we can understand, standing waves. Purpose is still, compared with plan, which is active. So we are, in a way, consulting the archetypes found on the cosmic ethers and especially on the monadic plane. And there is a relative stillness there which has to be expressed through action. But in the realm of purpose, there is stillness. Now, we can also, it's also possible to look at the systemic ethers. There is action there, but it is still an archetypal physical world compared with the lower 3 subplanes, the dense physical world, which is non-archetypal and must respond in action to the archetypes that are found on the systemic ethers, lesser archetypes, of course. So if purpose is to be registered, the consciousness must have stillness, and there's something about purpose which is archetypal, and archetypes, in a way, remain what they are. They're not always changing form and configuration. They have a perfected relationship in the mind of God, and they are held in that relationship, which can be perceived as stillness. So, practically speaking, if we want to know what purpose is, we have to become very, very still and not give in to all of the types of movements which surround us, because they will obscure the impression of the archetype. And a beauty which was space. This room is full of light and life and power, of stillness which was purpose, and a beauty which was space. And one is reminded here of that which is upon the Buddhic plane, where all forms are harmonized. And they are these semi-archetypal forms are laid out in such a way that there is a perfect geometry. They are laid out in space. Space, in a way, is an illusion. Space is a category of the mind, but you cannot express beauty in extension without the illusion of space. So we're talking about a kind of Buddhic geometry related to the second ray, the great geometrician. We're talking about the first ray, stillness and purpose, and the second ray, the beauty laid out upon the fourth plane and expressed, or waiting to be expressed, in the lower worlds. Space and consciousness are in a way one and the same. Space is a perception, I believe. Space is even created by perception. Space is the opportunity for God to express beauty of relationship. There are higher examples of beauty than those which are expressed in the outer world. And in this room, which is archetypal by comparison, and in which right relationship already exists, within this room, or toward this room, the magician, the seventh magician, will have to look, or be compelled to look. So this higher room, in a way, represents the world of being. We could go down every plane and we could see the degree of motion there is on each one of the cosmic ethers. I mean, one day we'll be able to do that. But it becomes progressively more still as we rise, although the vibration increases, until in Shambhala we have, on the highest level, we have the great causal forms, a world of light and magnetism. Let's see what he says about that. I'll find it, and then I'll come right back. So he says of Shambhala in Dina 2, page 293, it is a world of pure energy, of light, and of directed force. It can be seen as streams and centers of force, all forming a pattern of consummate beauty. One pattern, apparently, with many parts, all forming a pattern of consummate beauty, all potently invocative of the world of the soul and of the world of phenomena. It therefore constitutes, in a very real sense, the world of causes and of initiation. This is an important statement. Okay. So the world in which he is facing below the dotted line, the 18 lower planes, subplanes, are full of movement and not of God-devised relationship or a divine ideated relationship, as is Shambhala. This is a world of relative perfection in which, even though there is movement, it's movement within a sustained pattern. But we're looking at chaos now. The lower room, the other room, the room that he is facing, was full of movement, a sound of great activity, so lots of noise, because the third ray is in many ways on the outer level the ray of noise, of frictional collision on all the sound produced through that. A chaos without form. Things in such constant motion that they form no lasting relationships, and even if they form relatively lasting relationships, they do not reflect the higher and more beautiful relationships in the cosmic etheric worlds. Of work which had no true objective. Why are you doing this? Well, we're just doing this. There are patterns that are repeated in the lower worlds, and seventh ray types fall into meaningless repetition of activities and patterns which do not really lead to a valuable objective in line with the plan. So there can be a repetition of patterns, but the patterns are not really aligned with what the plan is trying to achieve. So here we have our normal world of becoming, which is in flux. This other room, the other room, was full of movement, a sound of great activity. So you can't hear the still small voice, you cannot hear the word of the soul, you cannot hear the higher harmonious sounds. A chaos without form, so there's no reliability and there's no real beauty in this chaos, and of work which had no true objective. By true objective, one means that which represents the truth, true objective. The truth is found in this case in the archetypal indications of the cosmic ethers, going all the way up to the logoic plane, but represented as low as the Buddhic plane. The eyes, two eyes in this case, of the magician were fixed on chaos. You know how sometimes you are riveted in your attention by that which you do not like, that which you find disgusting or repulsive, especially when you're not afraid of it and you have to do something about it. You study it. You cannot believe that there can be such a condition that is so different from the one that you would like to see achieved. It's sort of like the fascination with evil. Why does one look at it? It's almost in disbelief that it can exist, and also with the intention of doing something about it. The eyes of the magician were fixed on chaos. He liked it not. If you meet a true seventh ray type, you will realize how abhorrent to them is chaos, or misshapen forms, or unbeautiful forms. His back was towards the room of vital stillness. Well, there's a hint there. Vital represents the vital body. And the vital body of the larger God, the planetary God, and the solar God is found upon the cosmic ethers. So we are talking here about the cosmic ethers, which to a degree the soul on the higher mental plane does reflect. But we're really talking about the archetypal worlds, of which the soul is the reflection, but they are truly found upon the cosmic ethers. So there's a room of vital stillness. It has energy. It has the cosmic pranas operative. It sustains the archetypes, which are the true forms in the Platonic sense. These forms which are to be expressed in the lower worlds. His back was towards the room of vital stillness, and up to a certain point you don't have eyes behind your back, so he knew it not. He was not aware that there was an archetypal world which could hold the solution to the world of chaos, of which he so much disapproves. And the arch is tottering overhead. He cannot remain in that condition. There will be an imminent fusion of these worlds, and that apparently safe place, the arch, where one can be the observer of the chaos but not really know what to do, and where one will not know what lies on the other side of the arch, that space for standing, that space for consciousness, will be destroyed as the solar angel does its work, stimulating the fusion of soul and personality, and eventually of the still higher worlds with the soul-infused personality. He cannot sit on the fence forever. A merging, a fusion is required by the evolutionary process, and if he tries to keep his consciousness there, it will be destroyed. He will not be in the true place of safety, which is in the room of vital stillness, the existence of which he does not acknowledge or understand. Nor can he go fully into the world of becoming and the world of sublunar activity, the world of fire by friction, because he finds it repellent. So his only safety is to somehow become aware of the archetypal world. Let's see how this happens. He needs to change his standing place, because according to where you stand, so may be your fate. As we learn in the rules of white magic, the requirement that he find that standing place which is neither dry nor wet. It must be the place whereon his feet are set. In other words, there is no safety for the magician unless he learns to stand within the etheric brain focused there. And there is the place for magic to be wrought. So he needs a different standing place, because his present standing place is perilous. It's not in this world, it's not in that world, it's not committed to one or the other. Hopefully he will never commit to the lower world, or he would become a black magician. He has to move on into white magic. He murmured in despair. Well, he didn't cry aloud, did he? This is the difference in the psychology of the seventh ray and the sixth ray type. The seventh ray types are not so demonstrative. I'm reminded of people in government in the United States in the old days. Some people, more on the first ray, they like to communicate with the voice. They don't want to bother writing. They want to be direct. They want to say what they have to say directly to people's face, and so forth. Other types, interestingly enough, they'd rather write. They'd rather work by committee. They'd rather communicate in that way, and Thomas Jefferson was one of them. He was not so effective in speaking. He was more effective in writing, and when he was president, he would communicate much through the written word. Not so demonstrative, not so direct. He murmured to himself. It's not something for other people to be heard. It's something that is interior. He murmured in despair. Notice how despair overtakes the various soul types as they move along. There must come a point of despair. Otherwise, you're not teachable. He's reviewing what he's tried to do for ages. That's more than one life, isn't it? For ages, I have stood, standing first ray like a pillar, seventh ray rather, like a pillar. First ray and seventh ray both stand. For ages I have stood and sought to solve the problem of this room, this particular state of consciousness with all these contents of consciousness, my physical, vital, emotional, mental environment, but especially the outer environment, because the seventh ray type is the worker in the furthest world. And the furthest world is the very lowest part, etheric, physical, of the dense physical body of the planetary logos and of the solar logos. So there's a special function of the seventh ray type to work in the world that the normal senses reveal, and this they call practical. For ages I have stood and sought to solve the problem of this room, to rearrange the chaos, using intelligence, of course. The third ray and the seventh ray are both great rearrangers, but the most often it's the seventh ray type that has the greater aesthetic in the rearrangement of things. Sometimes third ray types just rearrange to keep things moving and do not have in mind finding an archetypal pattern, but just something which is expedient and will serve their ends. Later, of course, this changes, and the love of the ordered process begins to control. For ages I have stood and sought to solve the problem of this room, to rearrange the chaos so that beauty might shine forth, and beauty would be the reflection of the archetype which somehow unconsciously the seventh ray type has. They are very archetypally aligned. If you really think about it, it's kind of interesting. The monadic plane, where we reach our first real archetypes, I think, is the seventh plane from above when counting the planes on which the five liberated, or one almost liberated, five higher hierarchies demonstrate. Then you go down to the egoic plane, and finally the monadic plane is the seventh. The seventh ray has a connection with monadic archetypes. To rearrange the chaos so that beauty might shine forth. It's one of the rays of beauty. It's one of the two practically artistic rays, the fourth and the seventh. And the goal of my desire, it's still personal desire, individual desire. It's not yet a higher dream, impulsed by the soul, but unconsciously that is there. So always there's this right arrangement. It's the ray of right arrangement, the seventh ray. And it tries to find that type of arrangement which will gel with the archetype, and then you just know it because it has achieved congruence with something higher. And suddenly there's a freeing that occurs, and you just know it's right, intuitively, because the link between the archetype and the arrangement you've made is unobstructed. To rearrange the chaos so that beauty might shine forth, and the goal of my desire. He's reviewing. I sought to weave. Now, it's interesting how the word weave shows up. It shows up in the third ray. It even shows up in the fifth ray. Another pattern must be woven, another garment form. What shall I do? Shew me another way to weave, says the fifth ray monad in the Blessed One stanzas of the fifth ray. And now here we have weaving again. Well, I suppose whenever you get involved with the intelligence aspect, there is an arrangement of things where you bind them together and you put them into sort of a fixed relationship, and this is called weaving. I sought to weave these colors because remember that to the desires and intentions of all the other six rays, the seventh ray offers the possibility of consummation. This is a good quotation. It's in the rays and the initiations. I wonder if I can find that without losing my... Here it gives all of the all of the chapters, which I don't want. But here we go. Rays and the initiations, and it's on page 507, something like that. Oh, that's discipleship in the New Age. I didn't want that. I want the rays and the initiations. Sorry for the little delay here. I'll press that. Okay, 507. And it says, the preservation of values is the task of the initiate on the first ray, etc., etc., etc. The task of all the different initiates, etc. And towards that purpose and its earthly consummation, the seventh ray gives all it has. The ray of vision and of application indicates the way direct, evokes the will to follow, that's the sixth ray, and welds the love of God and the love of man and all that breathes into the purpose underlying all. So all of these different rays are somehow amalgamated in terms of purpose, and towards that purpose and its earthly consummation, especially on the lower planes, the seventh ray gives all it has. So he wants to actually make something beautiful happen in line with these archetypes of beauty, a dream of beauty. It is one of the rays of beauty, the seventh ray. And to harmonize the many sounds. You see, it's bringing some of these fourth ray characteristics into expression. Now this is interesting because the fourth plane, or the Buddhic plane, is associated with the fourth ray. But it's also the plane of color, the plane of beauty, and the plane of harmonization. So what's going on the fourth plane, which is the destination towards which the modern disciple is oriented, giving him the intuition, towards this fourth plane, the seventh ray type is oriented in the task of making the indications of the fourth plane occur within the lowest worlds. The seventh ray type bringing all of this to consummation, and that's what he's tried to do for ages. It's not good enough for there to be a thought of beauty or a feeling of beauty, or even for there to be a kind of a vital arrangement in the astral body which suggests, in the etheric body which suggests beauty. It has to work out on the dense physical level. These are some of the most achievement-oriented of the types because they are efficient, they're responsible, methodical, and they work and work until things come through. So then he gives this self-condemnation of his own efforts. Achievement lacks. Naught but my failure can be seen, because the seventh ray types are always trying to live up to a certain standard. Why the standard? Because the archetype sets the standard, and since they are aware of the truer inner designs, the archetypes, the true forms, as Plato would have them in the mind of God, they know when they had measured up or not measured up, when they brought the archetype through or not. And to not bring the archetype through, or the intended design, whatever it may be in any particular life, is a failure. Naught but my failure can be seen. So there's a kind of depression that is descending, as it always must, before the individual becomes teachable. But there's an intimation here. And yet I know there is a difference between that which I can see before my eyes and which repels me, and that which I begin to sense behind my back. At first, his back was towards the room of vital stillness. He knew it not. But now he begins to sense it. Something's moving back there. Something is impelling. Something is causal in back of me. There's some sort of magnetic pressure or attraction which I can feel on a subconscious level, or perhaps the beginning of an intuitive registration. What shall I do? Well, this is that same moment as we found. Then silence reigned, no answer came, that kind of thing. Or the fourth ray type just left with the devastation of his sounds having died out, and he didn't know which way to turn. So there is this moment when the invocation goes up. What shall I do? Well, when you turn upward and you say, what shall I do? Master Moria said an interesting thing. He said he is almost giving purpose to the members of the Black Lodge, saying they have to surround the disciple so totally on every side that his only choice is to look up for the solution. And that looking up is an invocation, and naturally from the higher powers the solution does descend. What shall I do? Well, it's not going to come with a specific answer, is it? Usually life speaks. So life is speaking from a higher place, above the head of the magician. Now this is indicating purpose, because the head center is the center of purpose, and it indicates a higher world. It's not coming from the same level on which he stands. He's sort of standing in a way on the fourth subplane of the mental plane, just below the dividing line, and not yet with consciousness in the causal body, not yet really having built the antikarana. But this process is a magnetic one and helps him build that antikarana. We will see. So, in the realm of purpose, above the head of the magician, involving his head center and probably also the causal body, and just behind his back, because that's kind of interesting, it's not before his eyes, but it's just behind his back, meaning it's very close to him, and it probably involves the chakras, which are actually said to be about, most of them, about 3 inches behind the backbone. In the etheric realm and in the higher mental realm, this activity is happening above the head of the magician and just behind his back, and yet within the room of ordered beauty. Now, even if this room of ordered beauty is the Buddhic plane, it will have its reflection in the systemic ethers of his own etheric body. Sometimes it's said, well, where is Shambhala? Well, it's in the cosmic ethers. Or is it also reflected in the systemic ethers more locally, as in the Gobi Desert, and so forth? So there is definitely a connection between the higher ethers and the lower ethers. And eventually, through etheric substitution, the higher ethers affect and replace and reorder the lower ethers. So above the head of the magician, involving that great rearranging center, which is occultly the head center, and just behind his back, not yet revealed to him, but etherically effective, with the chakras along the backbone, and yet within the room of ordered beauty, meaning that it is minimally etheric and probably has its impulse from the cosmic ethers, a magnet vast began to oscillate. Rhythmic movement is suggested in oscillation, and the seventh ray is the ray of rhythm, and we might think in this case of the cosmic magnet, but we can also think of the magnet of the soul, or the magnet of the higher nature of the individual, the magnet of the true ego, which is on the triadal levels, with its reflections in the soul and in the etheric body. So some form of subtle energy is now going to be operative. And if it's a magnet, it's going to have the power of attraction and repulsion. We know that when we look at the effect of magnets upon material particles, that lines of arrangement are seen, patterns are revealed. So the magnetic field is a patterned field. And this magnet is from the archetypal worlds. So it has the power within the man's higher nature to archetypalize the lower worlds and to change the chaos. That's what we're going to see. So there is a rhythm being established. There are currents being applied, magnetic currents. It is causative, as the etheric level is causative to the outer world of chaos. We call these things, in modern language, morphogenic fields. The power of the etheric pattern to repattern the outer world, to which it is causative, and to which the outer world is negative. And this magnet causes a kind of reversal of the wheel. It caused the revolution of the man within the arch. which tottered to a future fall. So you can stand upon the higher levels of the concrete mind on the fourth subplane, and you can have your eyes entirely in the lower worlds. Or you can be subject to an energy which reorients your vision, and that which was behind your back can now become before your eyes. So the man, by now the disciple, or at least the aspirant, is revolving under the arch, and he's now facing the other way. This arch is tottering. It will not be allowed to persist. This midway place, which in a way is the disciple, it's neither the soul nor entirely the personality, will fall. This midway place will be dissolved as a standing place, and the disciple must make a choice. Well, here the magnet, his own higher nature, is helping him do that. It caused the revolution, etheric causation, Buddhic causation, soul causation, of the man within the arch, which tottered. Now the arch is getting dangerous. It's already itself starting to oscillate, just like the magnet is oscillating. The two things can be related, because when there is a reorientation of the consciousness, the midway place at which a person stood, which was an uncommitted place in a way, a place designed for a future decision, a Libran kind of no man's land place, begins to threaten destruction. That midway place is threatened by that which separated the lower from the higher worlds. The magnet turned him round until he faced the scene and room unseen before. It's very rhythmic language. At first, he knew it not. Secondly, he began to sense something behind his back. Now, with the help of his own higher nature, which responds to his invocation, he turns around, or is turned around, and begins to see the archetypal worlds, the worlds of better and higher and more geometrical, more divine arrangement. He becomes conscious of the patterns which it has been his task all along to superimpose upon the lower worlds. But now he understands exactly what they are, rather than just feeling this urge to order vaguely. He knows the patterns that must be created, and all due to this arising within himself, this energy which contributes to the reorientation of his consciousness, and sometimes we call that the reversal of the wheel. We were so preoccupied with the outer world, and something turns us around, so we turn within and discover within ourselves a kingdom of heaven, a kingdom of archetypes, of geometry, of beautiful patterns, and especially in the case of this type of individual, the recognition of these patterns will guide his work. So there is a reorientation that's occurring here, from the cosmic ethers to the soul to the systemic ethers of his own etheric body. Now he sees, but he hasn't acted, right? He at least understands there is another and higher world, which I'm sure fascinates him. What's he going to do about it? Then through the center of his heart, now this is the soul operating here, the magnet poured its force attractive. So these higher energies draw the heart of the man, the heart and soul of the man, you might say. They draw his consciousness forward towards themselves. They seek, these higher energies magnetically seek that the consciousness of the disciple will be more thoroughly immersed with, merged in, identified with these higher attractive sources and levels of consciousness. So it becomes his heart's desire to enter the room of light and life and power, of vital stillness, of ordered beauty. It becomes a great longing of the heart to enter this archetypal world, which is his deeper nature, and with which he as a jiva, representing that deeper nature, resonates. And the magnet poured its force repulsive. The law of repulse is involved here, so that there are some things that are being confirmed as of high value to him, and other things which are being thrown to the side in the outer worlds. And he will have the power then to reject former preoccupations, former involvements, former patterns in which he was engaged, which were really not sufficient to give him full control over his life in an ordered and beautiful way. So the power of attraction and repulsion is being sent into his heart, the center of his being, the center of his life. And, if we want to consider this magnet as being cosmic etheric in nature, then the soul is his heart. And then the soul will influence the personality with streams of energy which are felt to be inherently attractive and which have the effect of inducing repulsion towards other contents of consciousness. There's no question that to make a reorientation, one has to affirm certain things and deny others. One has to move towards certain things and affirm them, and move away from other things and deny them, at least for a time. So he's right in the middle of the great second aspect of divinity. It's called the law of attraction and repulsion. And from his egoic nature, whether we want to consider that the soul nature or his true ego in the triadal worlds, this arranging and rearranging magnetic repulsive force is operating. What's happening in the outer worlds? This energy of this higher energy that's now working through him helps him act in such a way as to reduce the chaos. This higher energy reduced the chaos until its forms no longer could be seen. The forms of chaos, whatever they were, are now being reduced to order, and the outer world is changed. Now, he is acting in this because this force is going through his heart. He's facing the room, but of course he can also face the outer world as well. He's oriented towards the inner room of vital stillness, but he still has to act in the outer world. And the force that is pouring through his heart, which is the force of the law of repulse, which is really an aspect of the law of love. That's very interesting because, we're talking about the great law of attraction or the law of love, but it is having also a repulsive effect. The chaos is being reduced. He's able to see it as reduced, and he's able to contribute to its reduction. So the outer world is taking shape, taking form. The right relations in the outer world are appearing. And some aspects of a beauty unrevealed before he was able to turn around and face the scene and room unseen before, they are emerging in the outer world. So the world of becoming is beginning to reflect the world of being where the magnet resides. Now, part of this is perception, because a man can see the beauty where once before he only saw chaos.
You are the only participant in this conference. Press any key to continue this conference.
Okay, I've just been told I'm the only participant in this
Press any
conference.
key to continue this conference.
Okay. We'll hope that it works. Otherwise, I will have to...
Press any key to continue this conference.
Yes, I am pressing a key to continue this conference. I'm almost finished.
Goodbye.
Okay. Well, let us see if I can continue like this. I hope so. This is one of those little moments that might have to be edited out, but you know, GoToWebinar doesn't like you to. It doesn't like you to talk only to yourself. So we will see how this works. I'm not yet sure whether we're actually recording something. Hopefully we are. We will see. So the chaos is reduced, and the beauty of the inner worlds is also being revealed. So we're going to try this. At least it will come through on the audio, and if it doesn't come through on the video, I will have to do what I can. Okay, so this power from the inner worlds, working through him and through his heart, has reduced the chaos so that his view of the outer world has changed, and the patterns of the outer world have changed, and the beauty of the inner worlds are emerging. Now he is between two worlds, but he's going to be safe because he's so oriented towards the inner world that he need not stay on the fence. He will commit himself to the soul entirely, and by the third initiation, he will be able to walk into the area of the causal body and polarize his consciousness there. And the final sentence is this: and from the room, that is the room of ordered stillness and vital stillness and ordered beauty, and from the room a light shone forth. Presumably the light of the true ego, the light of the solar angel, the light of the from the triadal realms. And from the room a light shone forth, and by its powers and life, the higher powers, the higher psychic powers, the powers resident on the higher planes that have by now a very great effect on the aligned magician. And by its powers and life, forced the magician to move forward into light and leave the arch of peril. It's very interesting how there's a kind of compulsion with this seventh ray operating upon the man. It's kind of an overwhelming power that causes the revolution of the man within the arch that tottered to a future fall. The magnet turned him round. The magnet forced him to move forward into the light of the soul, into the light of the triad. You see, when the magnet pours its force attractive and repulsive through him, it's like the antikarana being built. There is a definite connection between his position on the mental plane and these higher energies. So he has alignment now. And this alignment will actually lead to his repolarization. Repolarization upon the higher levels, within the soul, within the consciousness of the soul, and he will be subject to the energies of the etheric, cosmic etheric body through the antikarana, which is being built through this alignment. So, in fact, we have a situation in which he is now changing his polarization entirely. He is becoming the initiate. He's going to be able to move forward into the light of the causal body, and in response to the antikarana, he will receive the triadal impulses. He will no longer focus his consciousness directly below the dotted line. He will be causally polarized and, in fact, still higher in his polarization. So, in fact, he has learned the way to use his higher nature, working through him, to rearrange the lower world so that a dream of beauty may emerge. What did he say up here? He said, I sought to rearrange the chaos so that beauty might shine forth, and the goal of my desire. I sought to weave these many colors into a dream of beauty and to harmonize the many forms. He will now be allowed to do this, but it will not be a personal rearrangement, just the way the fourth ray type learned that he must create for the world and not for himself. Just the way the third ray type learned that he cannot arrange the warp and the woof of his carpet according to his desires, but it must be according to the pattern in the skies, the model of the plan, the color and the beauty of the whole. It's become impersonal. The magnet is impersonal. It's a magnet which represents in its own small way the cosmic magnet, which is a great divine source determining the correct intended geometry of great beings. So we might say now that this seventh ray type is serving a higher geometry. He's serving the energies of this room of vital stillness and ordered beauty. He's serving the archetypes which are reflected in his nature from the still greater archetypes which belong to the planetary logos and to the solar logos. So his heart's desire will be achieved, and the order which he has sought will be reflected in the lower worlds, and he will like it. He will not be filled with dissatisfaction, which he has been up to this point as he viewed the chaos. So let's read the whole thing. This, after all, will be very important in the New Age. Many of these types of souls will be coming in, and they will try to reorder the world, some of them according to their own personal design, and some of them according to a higher impression. Here we have in this law of repulse, obviously, response eventually to a higher impression from the higher aspects of the man's nature, which in fact reflect the archetypes on the monadic plane and even the logoic plane. When a man is truly aligned, these archetypes to which he responds within himself are also aligned with the planetary archetypes. Under an arch between two rooms, the seventh magician stood. One room was full of light and life and power, of stillness which was purpose and a beauty which was space. The other room was full of movement, a sound of great activity, a chaos without form, of work which had no true objective. The eyes of the magician were fixed on chaos. He liked it not. His back was towards the room of vital stillness. He knew it not. The arch was tottering overhead. He murmured in despair, "For ages I have stood and sought to solve the problem of this room, to rearrange the chaos so that beauty might shine forth and the goal of my desire. I sought to weave these colors into a dream of beauty and to harmonize the many sounds. Achievement lacks. Naught but my failure can be seen. And yet I know there is a difference between that which I can see before my eyes and that which I begin to sense behind my back. What shall I do?" Above the head of the magician and just behind his back, and yet within the room of ordered beauty, a magnet vast began to oscillate. It caused the revolution of the man within the arch, which tottered to a future fall. The magnet turned him round until he faced the scene and room unseen before. Then through the center of his heart, the magnet poured its force attractive. The magnet poured its force repulsive. It reduced the chaos so that its forms, it reduced the chaos until its forms no longer could be seen. Some aspects of a beauty unrevealed before emerged. And from the room a light shone forth, and by its powers and life forced the magician to move forward into light and leave the arch of peril. Okay, friends, we have made our way through 7 laws of repulse in this Old Commentary Commentaries series. And we have some potent tools here that will help us with a necessary reorientation in our life, or help us continue a reorientation which has been begun in previous lives or even in this one. We have a path we can take to affirm the highest spiritual values within us and to temporarily reject at least former preoccupations which may have had their value but which can be regathered under another and higher perspective. We have a way of detachment, a way which will allow us to adhere to and identify with the highest in our nature while not becoming trapped in preoccupations indicated by our ray type, but indicated in relation to the lower world and our personal consciousness. We are evolving out of our personal consciousness, and the ray type of our soul will no longer function strictly through our personal consciousness. The personal consciousness will become a kind of sub-area, a sub-instrument, the personal ray, a sub-ray of our higher soul consciousness with which we now, and as which we now identify. There are some aspects of the law of repulse I might like to go through, more the academic side. We'll see if I can get into that soon. But at least you have these 7 ways, or 7 directions. And according to the soul ray that you conceive for yourself, perhaps you will recognize a process either begun or in progress. And you will be able, if it is in progress, to assist it with your conscious intelligence. All of these sections from the Old Commentary are useful in providing a method of spiritual evolution, each applying to different sections of the path and so forth. This law of repulse, I think, operates before the 3rd initiation is taken, even though it necessitates, to a degree, the building of the antakarana. And the true techniques of integration, while beginning relatively early, perhaps are not even completed until the 3rd degree is completed. That is a time for there to be a true integration between soul and personality. But then we are also engaged at that time in the soul infusion process, which continues really until the 4th initiation, adding to itself a monadic infusion after the 3rd. Well, there's much that could be said. I'm a little anxious about whether this 2 hours and 45 minutes of work here have been retained or destroyed by the whim of GoToWebinar. So we will find that out shortly. And I will be back to you with more of these old commentaries, talking about the Blessed One stanzas and the techniques of integration stanzas and some of the other marvelous stanzas having to do with the solar angel and so forth. It will be a long project, and I'll do my best. Let us close this work with the great invocation. I haven't been able to do that entirely along the way, but sometimes I have. So let's see if I can at least find it. And we are ready to begin it. The great invocation. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. Okay, friends, we will be back, hopefully in not too long a time, with some further commentaries, also continuing the work on adventures in identification, also continuing the work in esoteric psychology. And if you get this far, remember that we're going to have a Denmark webinar which works on the first rule in rays and the initiations, and also starting from the center of the book. What does it say here? Center of the book. Introductory remarks relating to initiation itself. Okay. Until then.